to Lesson 4, the impact of RevOps on growth. This is our last lesson in Class 1, the Introduction to Revenue Operations 101. Now that we've laid the crucial groundwork for understanding the purpose of revenue operations, the importance of a comprehensive unified data model like the revenue performance model, and discussed how to use holistic shared metrics to break down departmental silos, we're ready to dive deeper into the tangible impact of building a strong RevOps foundation. Remember, the ultimate goal of RevOps is to accelerate growth, and you can achieve this by focusing on 3 pillars: predictability, efficiency, and scalability. Revenue operations isn't just about putting better tools in place or cleaning up data. It is about that, but it's also about making your revenue engine reliable. We're pushing for repeatable, scalable, consistent growth, and that's achieved through leveraging clean, clear, comprehensive data to make insightful, data-backed decisions. Let's start out with predictability. This is the difference between hoping you hit your numbers and knowing you will. Predictability is the difference between asking that magic 8-ball for help or looking at a real-time, trustworthy dashboard and knowing what to do. Reliable data and standardized metrics are the bedrock of your revenue operations. As we've discussed, RevOps ensures everyone is speaking the same language, using the same definitions, and trusting the data from a single source of truth. That's how you get accurate forecasting. You can't budget, hire, or plan without reliable data, and that only comes from clean data enforced by RevOps. Predictability also comes from aligned processes. When marketing, sales, customer success, all your revenue departments are operating on the same documented procedures, your outcomes become repeatable. Next, let's talk efficiency. This is about doing more with less and maximizing profit. Efficiency comes from identifying bottlenecks and friction, and RevOps acts as the operations auditor, finding those points where leads stall or deals slow down or straight up fall through the cracks and poof, disappear. Like what happens when handoff between marketing and sales isn't rock solid. By identifying manual waste and redundancies, RevOps establishes automation to eliminate friction. Think of automated lead routing or data hygiene. These are the things that save your teams countless hours and prevent errors, leading to higher profit margin. Here's a real-world scenario to drive home the importance of efficiency. Think about the average sales rep spending 10 hours a day manually cleaning data or trying to find the right report. That's 10 hours they are not talking to a customer. That wasted time is a direct cost to your business. Revenue operations eliminates this manual waste through automated hygiene and clean, clear data governance, immediately boosting profit margins. Now let's talk scalability. Efficiency helps you grow now. Scalability prepares you to grow forever. Scalability comes from things like seamless touch points. When processes are standardized and enforced by technology, the customer journey becomes smooth and frictionless, from first session to becoming an advocate. This directly results in higher customer satisfaction and reduced churn. Scalability is also amplified by increased expansion opportunities. A great streamlined customer experience makes it easier for customers to buy more from you, naturally creating opportunities for expansion, upsells, retention. Since expansion revenue is almost always the most profitable revenue, RevOps directly fuels the growth that matters most. This consistent, repeatable impact is why we say RevOps unlocks the growth flywheel. Our flywheel has 4 stages. It represents the continuous loop of optimization and acceleration your revenue engine needs. First, organize and process data. You start by defining your data model, cleaning up your systems, and documenting your rules. Then you drive adoption and create reporting. You enforce the defined processes with technology, and you generate reliable, trustworthy reports. Then you improve those processes and performance. You analyze the reports and the metrics. You identify gaps, bottlenecks, and areas of improvement. And then you create actionable insights to turn those improvements into new rules, new technologies, new strategies that are then led back to the organization stage to begin the cycle all over again. You cannot achieve sustainable, predictable growth without this constant data-driven feedback loop. If you treat RevOps like a one and done project, your engine will eventually misfire. Said it before, and I'll say it 100 more times. The key to a solid revenue operations strategy is to treat it like a living, breathing mechanism to be constantly updated, iterated, and improved. The flywheel begins with organizing your process and data, which is why you'll hear me harp on getting clean, clear, consistent data from now until probably forever. The entire flywheel rests on a solid foundation, and that foundation is built on the first stage, organize. This is where you establish the uniform operating environment across all revenue functions. And that requires three critical components: standardizing rules, clear customer journey, and data governance. Standardized rules. What I mean by that is defining the details, defining exactly what an MQL is, what a clear handoff looks like, and what the specific rules are for things like discounting. These rules become your repeatable process. Clear customer journey. This is about mapping out every single step in your revenue performance model from sessions to closed revenue, ensuring every department knows their specific role, their core metrics, and their precise handoff points in a crystal clear way. Data governance. This is the ownership layer. RevOps takes ownership of the entire tech stack and data standards to ensure a single source of truth that everyone can trust. If the data is dirty or definitions are murky, the flywheel immediately stalls because subsequent reports will be meaningless. When you have one single source of truth, you need one clear-cut owner to ensure that source of truth is always up to date and trustworthy. The whole purpose of setting up your revenue operations foundation is to reach clean, clear, actionable insights. Let's take a look at an example data table. This shows a complete unified view of a company's revenue engine over 4 quarters. Notice how we're tracking the entire customer journey from sessions all the way to deals created and then beyond to average deal size. We're tracking conversion rates between each stage. When data is siloed, marketing might be celebrating high lead volume for, say, quarter 4, while sales is complaining about poor quality. Now, this data table doesn't show that, but there's an example. When you have a table like this with a unified view, you can actually take a step back, stop playing the blame game, and start solving the problem. Here's how I would use this data table as a revenue operations strategist to paint a picture of what's been happening these last couple quarters and design a roadmap for moving us forward. First, let's look at the trend of sessions. It seems to have increased quite a bit from quarter 3 to quarter 4. Leads have also risen, but when you look at the conversion rates, it's a relatively flat increase, not as exciting or impressive as it originally appeared. But still, an increase is an increase, and taking a step back shows us that steady growth has occurred quarter over quarter throughout the entire year. So far, this is giving me information, but it's not telling me a story. At this point, looking at only this blue box gives me numbers, but I don't have anything to action yet. So let's take a look at the MQLs. This is where life gets interesting because qualified leads doubled from quarter 3 to quarter 4. That's incredible. The marketing team is going to be pulling out balloons and confetti. But let's check and make sure that's not just a fluke. If you follow the line down, you'll see that only 20% of those 808 MQLs became SQLs. If you just look at that column for CR3, for conversion rate 3, the conversion from MQL to SQL, you might then get disappointed. Marketing may even start putting those balloons back up. Well, wait, because actually that 28 may have been the second lowest CR3 on the board, but it's still the highest number of SQLs of the year. This is why data without context is just noise. You have to be able to see all the data and contextualize it to get the full story. When you follow the line all the way through, you'll see that those 223 SQLs turned into 42 closed won deals. That's the highest number of closed deals all year long by a long shot. That's worth celebrating. But you also need to pay attention to the closed revenue and average deal size for the final piece of the puzzle. Your average deal size is dropped. So in the end, you needed those 42 deals to close to maintain that slight upward trend in closed revenue. All right, Nikki, what does all this mean? If you were my revenue operations strategist, you've talked me to death, but you've not told me anything. So here are my takeaways from this data table. Whatever marketing did in Q4 clearly worked. That's number one. We need to dig deeper into the campaign or the refresh or whatever marketing event happened to drive that increase in sessions and the spike in qualified leads. And we need to replicate and refine that for the future because it was clearly a success. Next, sales clearly pulled their weight and pushed deals across the finish line, but they were either for less products than normal or for a lower product tier. So my next step here would be diving into the product categories of each closed won deal and breaking it out, like breaking out the deals by rep. Is it a specific product or service that's not selling as much anymore? Is that why the average deal size dipped? Is it a specific rep that's underperforming? Or is it that people simply started out with fewer amounts or lower tiers? Diving in here would allow me the insight to develop either a product revamp or training update, depending on what I find. Finally, I'd also look at the closed deals for the whole year. Of my lost deals, what was the lost reason? Did price play a factor? Has one product been trending downward? What is it that I can see trend-wise that has led us to this Q4 average deal size dipping? Of my won deals for the rest of the year, what are the commonalities in the highest won deal amounts? Was it a rep, a product, a common pain point? What is it that I can double down on to try to get that average deal size back up again? This is the comprehensive view that allows RevOps to pinpoint the exact friction point that is costing the business the most money. Or alternatively, what exact selling point or product is making the business the most money. It's these dissections that give me the direction I need to map out a strategy for improvement. And that leads us directly to stage 4 of the RevOps flywheel, optimization. Okay, let's take a step back and let's pretend that the data table we just saw was actually negative instead of positive. Let's say instead of seeing the increase in Q4, we'd actually seen a dip in the lead to MQL conversion. Let's say that we're looking at that table and we've seen steady increases in all areas, every single conversion rate and volume metric, quarter over quarter for a couple of years. And then suddenly, wham, there's a plummet that seems anomalous. Here is how we would apply the RevOps framework, very similar to what we just talked through in the previous slide, but to solve for this dip, this negative anomaly. First, we would organize. We audit the existing MQL process, sit down with marketing and sales, and we define and document the current lead scoring model, the current qualification criteria. Critically review exactly what content, activities, and demographics truly qualify a lead as sales ready, and then make refinements and updates based on what you find. Then adopt. This is critical. Once you've organized and updated a process, you have to roll it out. You have to make sure that it's being tested and QA'd and that everyone is willing to adopt it. If you only get half adoption, if you roll out a new process and only certain people are using it, your data is going to be a mess and it's not going to be trustworthy. So what you have to do is really make sure that when you implement this new confirmed and consistent lead scoring process, for example, you'll leverage your tech stack to automate the qualification and scoring as much as possible. And you can also leverage your tech stack through tools like Supered to make sure that the process itself is clearly documented and no one has any excuse to not use it consistently and accurately every time from now on. Then you report. So this is the big part. When you make an optimization, you have to roll it out and you have to report on it to see if it's working. Measure the impact of the new process carefully and closely. Continue collecting insights. Let's say for the example that we have here, I would do 30 days and I would analyze the new conversion rates and make sure that we are actually seeing improvements. Additionally, you need to benchmark this as the date of change so that in the future, you know how to view the data holistically. This is a very important part, so I'll say it again. Remember to document and benchmark anytime you make changes to the process so that you know when you look at the data, you're not comparing precisely one-to-one, apples to apples any longer. Our goal is to always be refining. But when you make significant changes to address an anomaly like what we're talking about, you have to note it for future reference. Otherwise, you could see it again and then get confused and think it's anomaly again in the future. Finally, you'll optimize. If conversion rate goes up, then great. We roll out that updated process to everyone. We celebrate the win. We document it. We make sure that it becomes now the new gold standard, and then we move on to the next area in need of optimization. But if our changes didn't correct the issue, it's time to start the diagnostic all over. We may have missed the root cause or overlooked a significant area of friction. We need to go back and organize and reassess, strategize, test, and then implement. This is the constant iteration that drives acceleration and ensures your entire revenue engine is always improving. And there you have it. That's how to implement the foundation of revenue operations to actually impact growth. You establish clean, clear data. You operationalize metrics to create actionable strategy. You report on comprehensive revenue journey and look for detailed breakdowns in that data to ensure you fully understand what happened throughout the journey. And then you create a roadmap to iterate, improve, and optimize that process.